Hi, my name is Andy Klemenko. Recently, I gave a workshop for StackRox to a federal customer, and they asked if I could record it. I figured YouTube would be a great avenue to record it, not only for that customer, but share it with other customers. And the workshop really was based around how to build a very simple Kubernetes distribution on a bunch of VMs with Ingress, stateful storage, and StackRox securing it all and creating a secure pipeline. And that's what I've done. So in order to get to the documentation, there's two ways to get there. You can go to Klemenko, Clemenko, SR_tools at GitHub and look for the workshop directory, or you can go to andyc.info/roxshop, ROXSHOP. And here we'll find the workshop. Now, the way I've laid it out is there's in the same directory, there's a workshop.sh. This is what I use to build my 3 VMs. I put a little bit of some binaries in there for me just to kind of speed things along, like K3S up and a few others, like the RoxCTL. But what we can actually do now is we can go ahead and actually log in. And you can see here I ran my script. I've got my 3 nodes, student 1A, B, and C. And let's SSH into the first node, and this is what we're going to use for all our things, okay? And I'm going to be flipping back and forth to the docs just because it's relatively easy, and it's copy and paste. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export my student number, and I'm going to create some local variables for all of the FQDNs. This will help us in terms of IPs for K3S. We're going to make a local kube directory, and then what we're going to do is we're going to install K3S using K3S up from LXLS. And we're going to use the IPs. We're going to say don't install traffic. There's a specific reason. I'll get to that in a little bit. Because we're going to install traffic a little differently. We're going to use their CRD. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and paste this. And so K3S is actually SSHing to the nodes. It's very similar to Ansible and how it connects to the node, then runs a bunch of things. In this case, on the first node, it is connecting in and creating the cluster, aka the master node for Kubernetes. And then it's going to go into the second node and join it, and then go into the third node and join it. And it actually is relatively quick. You'll see in about 15 to 20 seconds, you have a fully deployed K3S. So there's 1 ready and 1 coming up. Let's look at it again. 3 ready. So boom, now we've got our full Kubernetes cluster, 3 nodes up and running. It's pretty simple. Okay, so I'm a big fan of traffic. I'm actually a traffic ambassador. And one of the things I like about traffic is the simplicity, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. But the reason why I don't deploy it, or I don't let K3S deploy it, is because I want to use their CRD. And the big difference is their CRD actually lets me use TLS pass-through very simply in a very easy way. So there we go. It's coming up. We'll give it another sec to come up. And what we need to do, and this is kind of a fun trick, is I actually pass in a Ingress Route, which is what traffic uses for its CRD, similar to an Ingress object. But then I basically pass in the dashboard through it, so I can use an FQDN and simply get to it with the dashboard. So we'll do that, and then we'll open up a new tab, and we'll go to traffic.1.stackrox.live, and there's my dashboard. So I've actually got the dashboard routing through traffic itself, routing through Ingress, which is kind of fun. Another thing I like about it is the GUI, and it's quick and it updates, and so I can quickly tell if there's something going wrong or not. Okay, cool. So we've got a cluster up, we've got Ingress up, and it's only been like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. The next thing we need to do is let's go ahead and deploy a stateful storage. And this is where I really love Longhorn. It's very simple. It's along the same lines as traffic, and it just works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy Longhorn from their Kubernetes, from their YAML. And what I'm going to do is, because K3S comes with a local path storage class, I'm going to go ahead and just make Longhorn the default one. And if we want to check, we can do a kubectl get sc. And now we can see that Longhorn is our default storage class for our cluster. Now, Longhorn does take a minute or two to come up. The reason being is it deploys a lot of different things. And I want to point out that Longhorn does something interesting. It takes the available storage on all of the nodes and aggregates them together, and also does redundancy. So it really does, with literally copy and paste of a couple YAMLs, it gives you extremely powerful, redundant, highly available stateful storage. Okay, so it's on its way up, and while the last little bit of the provisioners and stuff are coming up, what we're going to do is we're going to also give it an ingress route for traffic. Let me go ahead and create that. Paste that. And so now that's been created. If we flip back over here, we should see this number tick to 5. That was awesome. It was quick. And we can go and explore it and we see, oh, we've got a URL now called Longhorn. And I've actually got it already bookmarked there. Okay, so now I've got Longhorn up and running, and I can really kind of tell and see the state of all the nodes. And notice how it's doing the aggregate. We've got 100 gigs on each of the nodes, and I can go and look at volumes. Okay, well, I have no volumes. Maybe let's deploy StackRox. Okay, real quick to talk about architecture, right? So our StackRox platform has basically 3 major pieces, and it's going to be central, which is this core piece. That's really the GUI, the API, and a lot of the data analysis. And then the scanner. So that's, it's not on this image, actually it's up here, but the scanner allows us to do CVE scanning of images, both that are live running on the cluster, as well as you can ask it, hey, go scan this image, and it'll go scan it for us and give us the result. And then the sensor and collector pair, it's 1 sensor per cluster and then 1 collector per node. The collector deploys as a daemon set. You don't have to worry about it. It'll automatically get deployed to every node. And then the sensor automatically gets deployed to the cluster. That being said, we can deploy in a spoken hub. In other words, you can have sensors and collectors on additional nodes outside of the same node that Central's on. However, for my federal customers, I tend to prefer to have them run in a decoupled state. In other words, run 1 central sensors and scanner all per cluster. And that way you can run them independently and kind of make sure that they're up and, no single point of failure effectively. Okay. Moving on, the StackRox install. Now, interestingly enough, we can install with no registry. We can install offline. I'm going to skip that a little bit. I'm going to scroll down here and go to an online, okay? Reason being is I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to export my username. We'll go ahead and paste that in. And we're going to go ahead and let it ask me for my password. I'm not going to give you guys my password. And obviously, that's not my password because that would be kind of silly. One of the things I've also done is I've gone ahead and put in a license file on every node. So let's log in the node, ls, and there's our stackrox.lic license file. And what I'm doing is I'm using our roxctl now, and I'm going to generate our central configs. The nice thing about this command is that it'll output Kubernetes YAMLs. We also have a Helm option, so you can output the install configs for StackRox. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say use Longhorn. I'm going to say grab 30 gigs, use the license file, disable telemetry, and for load balancer, I'm going to pick none because I'm going to take advantage of traffic. And this is where that using the CRD and having that pass through comes in. Okay, so what this is going to do now is it's gone ahead and created my YAMLs. And if you want, here is the password. So it's going to randomly generate a password. We're going to have to remember that one. Okay, and I'm actually going to save it as a variable because it'll make sense later. So I'm saving it as a variable. And now what we need to do is run the script. So what will happen now is this should ask me for my password. Yep, it's asking me for my super secret password. I'm trying to remember which one it was. There you go. Okay, so the password's saved. And now what we can do, literally, kubectl apply. Okay, so kube native, very simple. Very clean, very easy to get Central up and running. So we can watch the pod. We can see it's pending. And what's happening in the background is it's actually, it's creating the storage, the persistent volume claim. And give it a sec, it'll attach. And while that's attaching, see now it's container creating. Our 30 gig persistent volume claim is been created and it's been attached to a node. And the node's ready and the pod's basically attaching to it. So now it's doing its final bit where it's pulling down the container image from our registry, and it's going to deploy. So we'll give it another sec. Sometimes it takes a few second or two to pull down off the interwebs, and that's fine. While we're waiting for that, what we can do is we can go ahead and create. Now this is interesting, an Ingress Route TCP. So this is going to allow us to do complete TCP. This is great for WebSockets, gRPC, any of those types of new web connection protocol thingies. You can tell I'm a web guy, right? And while we're doing that, let's go ahead and make sure our pod's up and running. We'll wait for our readiness check should be good. One of the other things I want to do, in fact, actually, here we'll go here. I'll show you traffic real quick. So our HTTP routers, we still have our 5, but notice we now have a TCP router. And what this is going to allow us to do is TLS terminate at StackRox itself. So we're not doing a man in the middle. StackRox itself is going to handle all the certs. Okay, we'll wait for that to come up. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and play with the horizontal pod autoscaler and our scanner. So we're just cutting back the number of replicas. Obviously, you could dial this up or down depending on the size of your cluster. And let's go back here and just double check central's up, which it should be. In which case we can go to rocks.1.stackrox.live. So one of the things I didn't tell you is that I set up a wildcard DNS for 1.stackrox.live to go to the node on port 80 and 443. And then that basically allows traffic to route all those wildcard DNSs. And boom, here we are. We've got central up and running. So remember that password we copied and pasted? This is where it's going to drive me nuts. I'm going to put it in my notes right there, but we'll go ahead and paste that in. And boom, we have StackRox fully deployed. Okay, notice we have 0 clusters, 0 nodes, 0 violations, 0. We have nothing. So remember those 3 major components? We've got the first one here. I'll scroll up. We got that first one installed central. Now we need to install the scanner and then the collectors and sensors. Okay, so what we can do now is let's deploy the scanner. So again, being Kubernetes native, we can simply do some kube stuff, kubectl apply, and just annotate. And so what we can do now is we can actually watch and make sure the scanner comes up, in which case, here we go. So we've got a scanner DB and we've got a scanner itself. And this will take a sec to come up. It's pretty quick. Yeah, there we go. It's coming up. While that's happening, we need to add the last piece. So this last piece is going to be the rockctl sensor. Okay, we're going to do the command line. Now remember I said we can talk spoken hub, but we have to run this command and point it to central. So that's our entry point for central. Then we have to give it the address for central internally. In other words, how are those sensors going to talk to our central service? So in this case, because it's the same cluster, we can leverage internal DNS. If this was external, we would actually use the external name here. Okay, we're going to use collection method. And remember that password variable we saved earlier? So there is our password. So let's go ahead and break that. Everything's up and running. Let's go ahead and deploy rockctl, create the sensor. So similar to when we ran rockctl central generate, it's going to create a folder called sensor K3S. And if we do an ls, we've got our central bundle that has from the first time we ran it, and now we've got the sensor K3S from the second time we ran it. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and deploy it and then watch the namespace. So again, it's asking me for my super secret password to the registry. Once that's done, by the way, it uses, it's creating image pool secrets for that to authenticate it. Obviously, if you were offline, if you had images loaded locally, there's some other additional steps to kind of just modify those install scripts, or I should say work around them in a clean way, because you don't need to set all that up. Okay, so now that we've got that running, let's take a look at the pods. Oh, I might have typed in my password wrong. If that's the case, we can fix that real quick. Let's just give it a second, see what it's doing. Yep, I typed it wrong. Don't you hate when you do that? Okay, so kubeget secret-n StackRox. You know what? I'm going to leave this in the video, showing live troubleshooting. So it's going to be collector StackRox. That's the secret we need to remove. So I'm going to do kube delete secret-n StackRox. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to run my sensor sh again, because I think it passed in the watch thing. Let's type in my password again, redeploy. I knew copying and pasting was going to get me, so let's give it a sec. And we should see it start to terminate and then come back. While we're waiting to see this update, what we can do is actually start talking about configuring, or I should say checking the GUI. So we'll give that a sec. Yeah, see the collectors are starting to run now. So we can log in, we can go back and see now we have 1 cluster, 3 nodes violations. So let's look at the health. So we actually have a health status in Central, and this is telling us this cluster status is unhealthy, the collector status is unhealthy. We can click on it and get a little more information. We can see we're running version 3051, our credential expirations ending in 12 months. And currently we're unhealthy, but if we go back here, notice everything's running. So this will take a sec to update. And now we're all green. It just takes a refresh of the screen. And we're all green. Cool. That was some good live troubleshooting. I love it. Okay, so now that we've got everything up, we can start to talk about authentication and how you access the GUI. So out of the box, we do HTTP basic auth through an admin username and password. We can integrate with a couple other methods, whether it's Auth0, OpenID, SAML2, PKI certificates, Google IAP. We can absolutely do that. Now, let's get into the real meat and potatoes about our platform. So we have policies. We ship with 64. Actually, they just removed one. We ship with 63 system policies out of the box. These are strong recommendations of policies that you would use to validate images, look at things running, prevent binaries from running, look for package managers, look for specific CVEs, capabilities, things like that. Our policy engine is one of the key pieces of our platform, and I think it's really powerful to not only look at it from a build stage, but then also a deploy or a runtime stage. Okay, and so we can drill into some of these policies. In this case, I'm showing about Nmap. I'm not going to drill into some of this just to keep this video short. We can look at this different stages. Again, build, deploy, runtime. Let's take a look at the integrations now. So one of the great things about our platform is it's not a walled garden. In other words, we realize you're going to have potentially enterprise scanners. You're going to have third-party registries. We don't ship with a registry. So being able to set up those credentials such that our scanner can connect to those registries, or we can take advantage of that rich information from other scanners. It's really powerful. So we've got a bunch of integrations to scanners and registries. We also have plugins, because this idea of we want to pull information, but we also want to give it back to you. We don't want to make it a walled garden. So you can use Slack, Webhook, Jira Email, Sumo Logic, any of that. You can also, which is really powerful, use our API, because our API will allow you to query the system, because everything you're seeing right now is backed by an API. It's kind of the modern web language, right? So if I click on API reference, I'll open a new tab. We actually have our entire API fully documented. So you can go and look about how, if you want to ask for a compliance scan, you want to ask for a network scan, you want to ask for what CVEs, you can absolutely do that from the API. And speaking of down on this lower left, we can also click on Help Center. So one nice thing about this is our product ships with a full set of the docs built in. This is perfect for air-gap networks, not just federal customers, because I've had quite a few that are not just air-gap, that are a lot of other commercial customers that are air-gapping as well for security reasons. But now the documentation's there, and you don't have to go back and forth. You don't have to worry about trying to remember things or write things down. Okay, so that was integrations and plugins. We talked a little bit about APIs and tokens. One of the interesting things I actually want to point out, the tokens, is you can actually specify your RBAC roles accordingly. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to do a Jenkins for CI. So you could click continuous integration and hit generate, and there's your token. And then you could plug it into Jenkins and have Jenkins have the ability to ask for scans and policy checks against images. Really, really powerful stuff. Okay. And this kind of gives you some instructions on how to go there and create, or you can use the API to create it through a curl, as long as you have the admin password, and now you can save it. And the other thing we can do, because you don't have to use necessarily the GUI, or I didn't mention we have a Jenkins plugin, but you have the ability to do scanner integration right from that rockctl image scan command line. So that rockctl becomes really powerful in terms of being able to really kind of interact with the system, create different reports, automation, right? We're not locking you in, and that's really important. Documentation and the API reference, I pointed out already. Troubleshooting really easy. Actually, we kind of already went through it. Generic Kubernetes troubleshooting. Get pod for the namespace, make sure everything's running. You can also go into that little heartbeat logo, and that'll give you some rich information as to what's going on with StackRox platform. So that's kind of cool. And that's kind of basic for the troubleshooting. So let's talk about some bonus tips. Let's say you're dealing, you're a Fed customer and you want to deal with different classification levels. I've actually got a script put together for you. It is in the main section of the SR tools. That's kind of nice. Another kind of bonus fun script is if you want to automate compliance scans. So I have another script in there that you can run and automate that, and you can output the JSON results of your compliance scan. So hopefully this helps in terms of a little bit of workshop. I'm going to skip the demo. I'm going to do the demo in another video just because it feels like we've been running pretty long. But here's a pretty simple way to deploy K3S, traffic, and Longhorn, right? K3S running all this, traffic and Longhorn, very simply with the StackRox platform, with TLS pass-through in under a couple minutes, right? Under 10, 15 minutes. It didn't take me that long. I hope this is helpful, and look out for my full StackRox demo video coming out soon. And if you've got any other questions, feel free to reach out to me at andy@stackrox.com, or I think I've got it up here as well. Yep, Clemenco@StackRox, same email, or you can find me on the Twitters at Clemenco. Thanks for watching. Bye.